Welcome to A Well-Designed Business with your host, LuAnn. LuAnn has a lifetime of experience building a multi-million-dollar business with her husband and cousin, and she knows the challenges you face in your interior design business. LuAnn brings you real-life answers to your most pressing problems, as well as practical strategies to explode your interior design business. So, let's get to the business of interior design.
Hi, welcome to another episode of A Well-Designed Business. Today on the show, we are going to meet Joe Cariati. Joe is an award-winning glass blower, artist, craftsman, and educator. With more than 20 years experience, he is a designer, maker, and mentor. In 2003, Joe opened his own studio in Los Angeles, California, where he continues to refine his craft and push his boundaries as a glass blower and as a designer. In 2015, he launched Joe Cariati Design. And today, in addition to his career and the things he's learned about being a creative and running a profitable business, we talk about the new line of glassware, lamps, pendants, and accessories that he has available to you through CuratedKravet.com. So give me a moment to tell you about our sponsor, and I'll be right back to introduce you to Joe Cariati. I'd like to thank my sponsor, Cherish, and to let you know about this gem of a resource. Cherish, which can be found at www.charish.com/trade, is the premier online marketplace where design pros just like you can go to source the best vintage decor and furniture. With more than 125,000 curated items for sale, Cherish makes it easy, fun, and fast for you to find stylish pieces at great deals to suit every client and every project. The items are ready to ship, hint, hint, which means no waiting, and Cherish offers a 2-day return policy. Here's some more good stuff. Cherish trade members enjoy special benefits, including cash back on every purchase, white glove delivery, and exclusive concierge service. Sign up for their trade program today at www.cherish.com/trade. Hey, Joe, thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So we are, two people in the Kravet Inc. family here, Joe. Everybody learned in the introduction that I just had before saying hello to you that you are a designer maker, you are a glass blower, and your products are featured on CuratedKravet.com. And so we're both part of this terrific family of Kravet Inc., and I'm excited that they connected us today. And I'm very excited to share your talent and your product and your experiences with our designer colleagues listening. So Joe, I know from a little bit of our discussion off air that it's a long road to become where you are now, Joe Cariati, in business owner and, like we said, designer maker and everything. And I think it's a little interesting, and I'd love for you to share. I hardly ever, as a matter of fact, ask somebody their whole trail to becoming who they are. But I think that this warrants a little discussion because glass blowing isn't something that you just, take a course in college and learn, right, Joe?
Right. Actually, that's where it begins, but that was 25 years ago. So, we're landing further out in space with lots and lots of practice behind us and continuing on into the future as well. So
yeah. So prior to, we'll talk about the pivotal moment in 2007, but give us a little bit of that background, Joe. Like you explained to me that you were working in university, teaching others the craft, working for others, glass blowing. Tell us a little, because I'm intrigued by the many years it probably takes to acquire this level of skill with this particular profession.
Yeah, thank you. We really did start back in college, and it's such a funny thing that glass blowing is available in colleges quite literally globally, as glass blowing is pretty much an industry. Maybe even we could call it blue-collar work. But lots of changes happened in the United States in the late 60s and 70s, and that's a larger, longer conversation. So here we are landing in college, able to take glass blowing, and I think for me straight away, I was interested in honing the craft. It's not to say that others aren't. However, in order to realize the designs that I truly wanted to make someday, that road is easily 10 to 15 years just to develop the skill
Wow.
to execute the things that we do today. Glassblowing itself might not be hard, but refinement is something that takes repetition. Thousands and thousands of things are literally made in my studio every year today with a very small team. Three of us can make about 4,000 things per year. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot.
No, it does.
But
no, it does.
If you're literally thinking about handling 4,000 pieces of molten glass per year, it's quite a feat. So that kind of also just speaks to the way in which I chose to design in this it's like simplistic yet really complex way of making things. To get the kind of quality that my glass has. Very light, very airy, very defined, crisp, modern. So long road. Thankfully, we're here. And I think that the most interesting thing, and this, I suppose, dovetails right into the business conversation as well, is that we're not done. And we're still learning and still refining and still moving forward. And the landscape in which we're participating is constantly changing as well. So, it's a never-ending kind of journey, even as a maker and as a business owner and designer.
It really is fascinating. I mean, I've been to Murano where I saw them blow the glass there. If you've ever, anybody who's ever taken the trip to Venice, Italy, it's like the prerequisite stop, right? You've got, it's sort of like going to Disneyland and not going to Epcot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a must get.
But, I mean, so that's my only visual on this and my only experience with it. But when you said 4,000 pieces a year, when I think about, watching that process, and I think what intrigued me about this is just that, like, you really do think of it as something, at least I did previously. I really did think of it as something that you learn at, with your father or your uncle or, and you grow up in it. I never really, almost like apprentice from an early young age. I didn't think about it as something in the American colleges or, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can imagine how long it really must take to really be more than proficient at it, right? To be at that level of true mastery and expertise where you're at your level, where you're nationally and internationally known for this.
Yeah, right. I know. It's really funny. It's that kind of conversation that we could also chat about, which is, if you're the best glass blower on the planet, how would anyone know? So that just speaks right back to taking the risk and forming this company that we, ultimately ended up solidifying in 2007. That was kind of the first time where I suppose I was ready to go to market. There had been lots and lots of development in the early 2000s with a couple of different lines. And I think I was still acquiring skill, still teaching in the university system. But, when you're speaking to family as well, just to touch back on that, two things. Number one, I would love to create a legacy company where it could be passed off to my son, Vincent Cariati, if he is interested in blowing glass someday. As well as, the structure in which I run my company is quite like family. We make cappuccinos together in the morning. We listen to music together. We talk about family. We eat our lunch all together and cook together at the table. Wow. So it is a very tight-knit,
Wait, and you're doing all that in Los Angeles, right? It's not like you're in the middle of a village in Italy. It sounds like you're in the middle of a village in Italy. That's such an awesome experience.
Yeah, we're trying to close the gap of the landscape of LA, and get everyone in here. We really do spend more time with each other than we do with our families. Yes. And, as bittersweet as it is saying that, I feel really fortunate that the glassblowing community at large is quite family oriented. It's a very small community, very tight knit. Everyone knows everyone. So with that, I was able to kind of cherry pick and select key people out of the industry to come and work for me. And the only requirement is that they do have to take one of my classes, because I teach and work and deliver information and listen in a very specific way. So as long as the personalities are kind of all flowing together, then I invite them to come and work. And they typically, they don't do an apprenticeship per se, because an apprenticeship would suggest that they come from zero.
Right.
Everyone that works with me has had at least 5 to 10 years previous glassblowing experience. So that gives you an idea of the amount of skill floating around the studio.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that it's really interesting the way that you cherry pick the people that you'd like to work for you, that you have certain requirements that, you know that they understand, and as ground rules and as ground philosophies and ground principles, so that they fit into your culture of your business. And of course, it's such a specific culture to have coffee together in the morning, cook lunch together, sit and eat lunch. I mean, at our office, it's like, okay, whatever. Like I'm eating lunch at 4:00. My husband gets up from his desk every day at 11:30. I'm going to lunch. The girls are catching it in between phone calls. It's like crazy.
Yeah.
It's sort of really, I'm very jealous right now, I have to say. So that's nice, though. It's really very nice. So now let's go to 2007. You've mentioned a couple times how that was a pivotal moment. And what happens in 2007, Joe? Where are we at?
In 2007, I applied and was accepted to the New York Now show, which at the time was branded as the New York International Gift Fair for many, many years, right?
Right.
But it was at the time such a powerhouse show. The economy was bustling that I was able to break into one division out on the pier, and I snatched it up anyway, and met key retailers and key buyers and people that I'm still in touch with today. I believe that the first time that I met Kravet was either 2008 or early 9, and they had approached me to create a custom collection for them, a custom colorway, for their showrooms. And we had a meeting at my studio in Los Angeles, and I was just, really, really flattered, really touched, really nervous, challenged. It was like all of the things that I had already been comfortable with inside of my business, like thus so far, even in such a short time. When someone as powerful as Kravet walks in, they're so easy to work with that it was, a lot of that anxiety was eliminated.
Right.
And we created a custom colorway collection for them in the large decanter collection, where quite literally, LuAnn, I still have people come to me today and they say, "Didn't I see you in Kravet?" And that was, many, many years ago. So it's a nod to Kravet. It's also a nod to my company and the hard work that we've done and the colorway that we selected. So this new kind of revamping of and energy going into Kravet today is also amazing and really thrilled.
Okay. Before we get to the new collection going to Curated Kravet, I want to pick apart that meeting first. So,
Sure.
So was it at a following New York Now showing that you met Kravet? So you started at 2007, but you said you met them 2008. So was it at New York Now? Is that the connection?
It was.
So you have a booth at New York Now, and somebody from Kravet is strolling the aisles, and they see your product, and they invite you for a conversation. They approach you and invite you and say, "Let's talk about possibly developing something together."
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. That's like jackpot, right? That's like
oh my God.
Every single company that's at New York Now is just sitting there hoping for that moment, right?
They really are.
Yeah.
It's such a touching moment. You want to hold on to it forever. And the trade show is bustling. And of course, Kravet is very professional, and you can't develop those conversations in the booth. And they obviously have a lot of work to do too. So, that's one of the business cards, so to speak, where you're just clutching it. Like,
yes,
oh my God,
I
that
know.
is completely amazing. And as a maker, And as a business owner, that kind of validation is, it's really touching and makes you feel really good.
Yes. Well, and for every, designer and maker out there that is at the show like that, it's terrific if you meet a contact with, a purchaser or an individual designer who falls in love with your product and wants to specify it on a project. But it's those kinds of conversations that you're just like,
and those kinds of connections where, you're literally then extending your network and, dare I say, your family.
Right.
Because
I
ultimately
agree.
some of these buyers you're going to have amazing relationships with, and you can have dinner with them when you go to New York and all of that. So that was kind of an unexpected detail inside of the language of my company. I think I was so face down, caught up in production during the years of 2008, 7, 8, 9, into 10, and maybe even into 11. It's kind of like I was pretty much a one-person army going out to the show, working the show by myself, and coming home, putting my head down and making all the orders, right? So it did take some time for the company to grow to a point where I could begin to really foster and pay attention to those relationships a little bit more closely and carefully.
Okay. And give us a little perspective. There are many designers listening that aspire to having licensing deals with companies such as Kravet, or aspire to designing a line of furniture or lighting or whatever it might be. So give us a little perspective on we understand the excitement. We understand the feeling of gratitude that somebody like Kravet Inc. taps your shoulder at a trade show and says, hey, let's have a conversation. Did you do anything in particular, Joe, to prepare for that conversation, or after you had the conversation, was there anything that you felt like you needed to get your ducks in a row about, or did you just go into it open-minded and wing it? Because I think that, for designers listening, of course, the story about your product being in curatedkravet.com and the beauty of your product is all 100% valuable. But, let's talk about that other side of it for a designer who is aspiring to follow in your footsteps in whatever their creative endeavor might be. How did you just take the meeting and then figure out details later, or did you have conversations with lawyers or advisors and say, what do I say and what do I do? Like, what did you or did you just go open-minded and just see what happened?
Yeah, I think so. We can definitely speak to the then and the now.
Yes.
Both situations didn't require any legal action, thankfully. So there's no sticky areas in that regard. The way in which I handled the meeting prior to was fairly simple. It was prepare the showroom as best I could. I had a small showroom space at the old studio. This is prior to moving into the facility that I'm in now. We're in 4,500 square feet with a beautiful showroom in the front. And, as I mentioned, the furnaces are roaring behind me and the team is working. Things have changed. Yes. However, I stayed very open. I did my homework in terms of as much as I could, taking a look at Kravet in general as a company, what the brand philosophy was, like as much little online research as I could. But I must admit, at that time, very open, not wanting to be pushy.
Right.
And so, again, we can have a conversation of then and now. And colorway was probably the primary thing that we were focused on then.
Okay.
And we handled it much different this time around when we speak to Curated Kravet. Back then, I just had a few samples, and then I remember the buyer had some questions like, can you make a red? And this is going to sound hysterical, but reds are so hard to make in hot glass. They want to go orange. So it was already a cringe moment, like, oh God, can I make a red?
That's like the first thing they ask. You're like, oh no.
All you want to do is say yes and be accommodating, of course. But
how bizarre that the first thing they ask you is like one of the hardest things to do.
Oh my God, right? It's like so
you just look up at the universe and go, really? Question one?
I love the fact that this time around we were able to drive the conversation, and the buyer was leading and following at the same time, because when you get I hate to say as established as we are, because of course we're still growing.
You earn that though.
You earn it, and you have some trust coming both ways, so we can make suggestions and alterations. And I actually am reserving the right to say no.
Right.
The older I get and wiser I get in this company.
It's an important word to learn.
Absolutely.
No, I like that though. I mean, you know what? The one really huge tip that I heard in there for especially a new designer that's thinking about approaching different companies or has been approached is that you did whatever research you could on the company and their brand and their message. And, you know, I think sometimes we forget about that. It's just like we say to our kids when they graduate college and they're going on a job interview, know everything you can about the company. It's the same thing with this. So I like that tip, Joe. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That's awesome. Okay, so now let's talk about the line that's at Curated Kravet. So it's tell us about it. Tell us about what's available and the special things that are happening with the line at curatedkravet.com.
Oh my God, we're thrilled. We're so happy. I want to blurt everything out at once. However, I'll try to slow down just a little bit. There is a fully custom colorway available only through Curated Kravet.
Very nice.
We have a beautiful blue grouping, some greens that have been released, and some ambers, and they are not available anywhere else.
Nice.
Colors like denim and lapis in the blue collection, tiger's eye and golden amber in the ambers. So malachite in our greens. And we also, in addition to having the two tiers that I'm most well known for, that would be the Angelic Bottle collection and the Petite Decanter collection. Curated Kravet also offers our table lamps, and that is a very special edition, and we're really fired up about the colorways just in those table lamps. Again, fully exclusive.
They're gorgeous. They're gorgeous. The table lamps are they're just gorgeous. I mean, all of it's gorgeous, but the lighting is particularly amazing.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so we have exclusive product and exclusive colors available through curatedkravet.com.
We do.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell us the process of coming up with that. So you worked with, obviously your team, but how did Kravet say, hey, we would love to have more of you, Joe, but we want it exclusive, or did you suggest it, or, how did that develop, so that you guys came up with this curated line within your line?
Right. Yes, for exclusivity. Now that's going to go and point back to the company. So Kravet they want to be able to secure that kind of exclusivity for obvious and very good reasons. And that's the point. As the business owner and as the maker and as our team, I mean, we must acquiesce and stay flexible and say, of course, Right. So what does that look like for you as a designer once you get a brand new kind of set of problems to solve? Oh my gosh, now we have to create something exclusive, could be one way to phrase it, or, oh my God, we get to create something exclusive. You're really kind of like switching gears and parlaying that conversation into creativity and expansion and the ability to do testing. So in terms of form, we're using our lovely Angelic Bottle collection and the Petite Decanters. So those forms aren't changed. They are what they are. So much refinement and development over the years just on those two collections. Okay. That to change the colorway essentially just took color testing. Okay. So we probably tested, if we're introducing 3 groups of colors at 3 colors per group, that's 9 colors total. So we probably tested 27 colors. Wow. And there again is where, as the maker and designer, I can have first right of refusal. Like, oh my God, get that gray away from me and my stuff.
I will not have that on my product.
No, that's not going over to our buyer at Kravet. And then from there, we can put the assortment together and then bat that back over to Kravet, literally physically. So we blow these sample spheres that are about 3 inches round, and the color densities are true. So we sent those over to the buyer, and then they have their meeting and their discussion, and they come back to us. So you're really speaking to this kind of symbiotic relationship. And I'm happy to say it was that with Kravet. Again, it was very gentle and very easy. Does it always go that way? Of course not. I'm speaking to other, avenues, other buyers, other businesses where you can get bristled very quickly, or things can fall apart because they're too specific, or there's not enough flexibility on either part. However, not the case with Kravet. So the development was actually very fluid. However, it was handled in quite a different manner than the first time round, wasn't it? We brought them in, we made our boards on our side, we did our color testing, our conversations were very deep, and they were very professional and sent over to Kravet in the same manner. And so within, 90 to 120 days, all of the colors were chosen. And then my brand director and I worked closely to figure out what forms we should offer and what groupings and what pairings would work together. And then very special to Curated Kravet is a line of vases and rose bowls, which again they were specifically developed for Curated Kravet, and are not available anywhere else.
Wow.
So we should have a look at those.
Yes, I don't know. Definitely. Well, I'm definitely going to include images on our website that will accompany this show. But of course, every designer out there should be going to curatedkravet.com, and they should be using their CK Podcast 10 code to get 10% off their first order. I mean, let's be real. So I have a couple of questions, maybe.
Sure.
In when you said you developed 3 color groupings with 3 colors within each grouping, is that driven by you and your team, Joe? And so it sounded like you sort of led that and kind of put them together and then presented, and then the selections were made. But I guess what I'm looking more for is it something like you mentioned how red is a very difficult color? So did you come to the suggestions of the color groupings based on what you know and knew that you could do well, and that, in your previous experience in your business are good sellers? Or is it developed by trends, like crazy things like the Pantone color of the year and all that stuff? Like how did either together collaboratively, you and Kravet come to what would be the color groupings that you settled on? Is it a trend thing, or is it just intrinsic to your art, and that's what that is? Does
Great.
that make sense, that question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay. I'll get more specific, but it's a little bit of all of what you said. Okay. So once more, we're going to go a bit deeper on our side in terms of taking a look at the colors that are available, extract what we believe in, and then I believe that Curated Kravet did do a reduction on the specific color grouping. So we may have sent 6 and loved 5 of the blues. It was their direction to extract 3. I think from all of our perspective, it's like we are knowing that we're about to get on the train together, and this is just the first stop. So we will come out strong, come out well curated, sorry, pardon the pun, and come out cohesive, without kind of diluting the statement. So yes, we look at Kravet's overall brand, and we might have looked at some inspiration boards as well. Again, the company on our side, we are taking a look as much as we can at current trends and trying to stay ahead of them. So Pantone color of the year, I think there was one year that I called it magically and didn't really realize it until somebody pointed it out. And then I was working with my brand director, and she called it just last year, which was pretty hilarious. She's like, I got it. I knew it. So that might help to answer that question. Again, it's very fluid. The bidirectional conversation and refinement. That is like almost at the top of my board these days. How can you really eliminate excess conversation and get more focused and be more effective. That's rooted in business too, right?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess for me, the where my brain was trying to wrap around it is, I know from conversations that I've had with different people over the last year and a half on the show, like Stacy Garcia comes to mind. She is the owner of Stacy Garcia Textiles and Lubatex, and she's, on the forefront of designing textiles, and she's also on the color board, I don't recall what it's called, where they forecast the trends and so forth. And so, she's, pretty big dynamo, this woman. She's really very talented. But the thing is, I remember her telling me how a year and a half, 2 years out, they will predict, this color board that she's part of will predict the color trends that will come. And then she then will work in her company developing new fabrics and textiles that reflect that color trend coming. And I'm 100% sure Kravet does the same thing. I just haven't had a direct conversation with anybody there who does it. So that's why I'm referencing Stacy. But the point is that then I look at now, because my brain goes to the business side of it. So here I am, I'm Curated Kravet, and I want to feature this line of product, but essentially it's art. I mean, for real, right? Yeah. And so my brain goes, well, as a business person, I want this to reflect the upcoming color trends that we are going to be producing in our fabrics and everything else, because that's just what designers are going to be specifying. But at the same time, we have, it is art. You don't tell a painter to paint a painting in a certain colorway. So that's where I was wondering the nexus of that. Like, sort of like where you were like, look, this glass isn't going to look good in the color Pantone of the year or something like that.
That's right.
So I was just kind of like wrapping it around from like Kravet is, look, they're taking you on because they believe in you. They believe in your company. They believe in your product, but it needs to sell at the end of the day. It can't sit there and all just look beautiful and every designer going, I can't place it anywhere. It doesn't work for me.
Place it. Yeah, I know.
So I was just wondering that marketing versus creative, is there a struggle there? But it sounds like it all just works out very beautifully and it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, I love that you're keying into that. I think in our regular assortment we have 16 colors. And I would love to speak a little bit deeper on colors because I find it frustrating yet interesting. We don't mix our colors. We literally order them from either New Zealand or Germany. Maybe someday we can do custom colors, but obviously the run would be, you'd have to know how many objects you could get out of the custom 250 pounds of glass that they would melt you. And there's maybe cost prohibitive. So we can't match Pantone. So we do interact with designers, obviously. We see them in New York now. We worked with them in the past and will again in the future. That is the toughest thing. When someone brings us an actual Pantone swatch, I can't laugh and I can't go too deep in the story, but it's like, that's part of my job then, isn't it? It's like the onus comes back to me as the designer and us as a company. How can we slide in neutral colors that we know will work? Right. Whether we're selling glass in the Hamptons or in Venice, California.
Right.
So that is part of my job as a creative and driver of the company, is like, I constantly have to challenge myself to fit into multiple interior landscapes.
Yes. I mean, it was part of like in my mind, I was rolling around thinking, yes, artist it needs to market, it needs to be profitable, it needs to sell. It's like, we don't want to be the starving artist.
No, payroll is due today, LuAnn.
Exactly. It's the truth.
Shortly.
That's it. That's it. So let's talk a little bit about that side of it then, going into being a creative and running a business, because that is something that all of the designers listening can really relate to, Joe. So you are, almost every designer I've ever spoken to is extremely passionate about what they create and floor plans and combining fabrics and combining elements and bringing a room to life. But, almost to a one, they also have, mentioned, let's be real. Like I don't want to do the business part, or I have to rely on somebody else. How do you manage, and how has your business, because obviously you're successful now. So can you share some challenges, or are you both sides? Are you a business side and an artist side? What's your story?
Yeah, thank you. I'm hearing all of that and sympathizing with.
You're in a little puddle of crying now because you remember how hard it was.
Sympathizing with our masses, Yeah, I think that it comes down, for me personally, I'm of the personality where I wanted to be able to touch each part of my company and understand it. Everything from bookkeeping, I would have to say not web design, and not even necessarily photography, but staging the photography, of course, and doing the arrangements and photography. We were growing every single year. So I was able to touch each part of my business forcefully, right? And then finally be able to let go of some of those aspects in order to free up time to be creative, but also dive back in and put on the business hat. So it is so challenging, and it's, I don't even know if it's worth mentioning, but putting on the creative hat, putting on the production hat as a glassmaker, right. I wouldn't even call that creative. That's like running around a racetrack that you know really well, and it feels great, and you're getting some things done, and you're getting your body warm, and then you need to take that hat off and come in and either work on billing or development, or contacting a customer that needs something very specific. And personally, I actually love all of those things. It wasn't until someone popped up out of the blue. I knew that I needed a change in my company. I felt like the company wasn't going to grow in a direction that I wanted it to grow, which was to include more people. So I do want to speak to that as kind of a separate conversation, because I have come from a family of educators and have been interested in nonprofit, and even the act of glassblowing is not a solo act, that I'm a super champion and a giant stand for including people inside of my business. So it's like, how can you get yourself out of the way, and how can you afford to get yourself out of the way to include more people, to enhance your business, to strengthen it, to take some of the stressors off of you from the dailies, whether that be checking the actual physical mail or the email, in order to get you into a position that's the most powerful. It sounds very simple. Of course, it's very, very difficult to come up to those levels. I believe financially would be the number one constraint.
Right, of course.
If we could all wave a magic wand and have 2 key people added to our business tomorrow, I would imagine that most designers could state what they are. I think. Right.
Well, I mean, did you find, first of all, you mentioned a couple of things in there, that at any point, whether current or past, you were doing all of these things in your business. You were doing the billing, you were doing development, you were doing production, you were doing designing, you're doing everything. And then it sounded like to me that you were describing that there's a dance in there that you experienced with figuring out how I heard that you made it your mission to understand every process, so that when it came time to give off certain projects, give off certain responsibilities, so that you could work where you're the most powerful, where you're the most productive, where you drive your machine the best, right? But you felt like it was important for you to understand each before you then eventually hired people to fill those roles. Is that what you said?
I believe that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an important thing. You feel like it's an important thing to understand every component, and I agree. I agree 100%, by the way.
Sure.
So that's a very tangible thing that we're saying to a solo designer out there, is to lock it up, understand each, division of your company, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, let's just call them divisions, right?
Yeah.
Project management, production, billing,
Bookkeeping,
marketing, everything,
taxes.
right? Taxes, accounting, exactly.
Absolutely. Yes,
So
of
then,
course.
but then, we often talk to people about, they make the list of the things that they do the best, the things they like to do the best, the things that they hate to do, and the things that they're bad at, and then figure out the things that you hate and the things that you're bad at, and like find somebody who does them well, so that you, like you said, you can work in your power. And so, do you agree with that? Did you eventually, by osmosis or by design, come to the skills that you're like, look, this is where I'm really good? Maybe you're really good at design and business development, or whatever your superpowers are. Did it come to you by design, or did it come to you by default? How did you navigate that? Think about the designer out there that is just struggling at that moment in his or her career with, I've got too much to do, I'm ready to grow. If I bring on somebody right now, it will probably positively affect my bottom line, even though it's going to be money out the gate. But we gotta give them a little encouragement, Joe, on how to do that.
Great question. I think that we roll back just a little bit. As long as your foundation is set up in your company, I would imagine it would be good for you in terms of your foundation. Again, I guess that's the best way to phrase it, is that you have your focus and your direction of your company, that your brand or your company is going to be moving in a direction that is forward from here, creatively and business-wise. So what foundation should be set up for you in the background? I believe the bookkeeping should be absolutely stable, and you shouldn't touch it. If you're not working with a bookkeeper, that should be the first thing that you hire. And then key things that you can pass off could be something as easy as social media, and any kind of office duties or dailies that are bogging you down from keeping your vision open and moving that into the future. So I think that this comes down to speaking also to setting yourself up and living into your dream. It sounds totally cliche, but it is so true. If you do not create a vision for your company, what are you going to live into? You are going to get stifled and caught up in dailies, and that is not going to move the company in the right direction. The thing about our company, again, I think this is, if you look at me as a personality, you're speaking to someone who is okay with taking 15 years to get to, be good at something. Like, really? Okay, so let's call me patient, right? So I was really patient in working with my bookkeeper, and now she's been with me for 6 years. Okay. So has she grown as a bookkeeper? Has she become more powerful? Absolutely. When things got escalated and elevated inside the company financially, we brought in, I call Marlene the wolf, and she is the professional cleaner of the books, and she is booked quarterly. And she has a great relationship with my tax accountant. They work closely together. So you can see that the necessity for stair-stepping came over time.
Right.
So should you run out and hire a bookkeeper that's $150 an hour? Of course not.
Right.
You need to look at the scale of your business and do what makes sense for each position, whether it's the bookkeeper, whether it's a social media intern, whether it's a project manager. Now that's a different conversation,
right?
Because project management, brand direction, sales direction, these are key phrases that are going to scare a lot of people and possibly cost a lot of money. So I hope that begins to answer that question. I'd like to speak to the higher ups and what we're up to today, because we have made some changes and they're not quite as scary as I thought.
Okay. I love it. It definitely makes a lot of sense. I love that you start with, what is your focus in your brand? And we talk about that with interior designers all the time. Matter of fact, we had recently Nicole Heimer from Curio Electro do a seminar to almost 20 interior designers at WindowWorks a couple of weeks ago. And it was how to define your brand as an interior designer. And I love that you start there, Joe, because it is true. Set your vision, figure out who you want to be, why you are that person, and what is your superpower? And then from there, start to focus on it and figure out how to develop it. And I love that you said the bookkeeper should be the first person on board. And it's true because, you know, as creatives, go be creative. Of course, lock it down. And like you said, understand how your books are done. You just don't turn them over and, you know, look the other way, God forbid. But get rid of that. And you said the daily activities that stifle the moving forward of the big vision of the company. Let those go. So I love it. You have a lot of great advice in there. And then I also thought that was really very valuable to say how you understood that it took you 15 full years to really step into your space as a designer maker. So why do we expect somebody that we hire to step into their space in a minute and a half, right? Like,
absolutely.
Teach them. I love it. I love it. I think it's so valuable. And so the thing is, what you're saying is, if you set a good foundation in the beginning, if you set your company and your vision and your systems up, it enables you to start at whatever spot you have and you're at, and like you said, scale up and grow, because it's not like you get big and then you're like, oh, let's figure this out. It's like, no, figure it out at the base and then move forward. There's something that I saw on your website, Joe, that I wanted to wrap into this part of the conversation.
Sure.
It said that you thrive off of a repeatable process with predictable results. Now, it says that, Joe. Are you surprised that that's there?
No, it just tickles me to admit it.
But I love that, because that is the basis for a fabulous business, something that gets up every day. It has a process. It's repeatable. And because it is a process and it is repeatable, you can expect predictable results from it. So talk to us a little bit about, and I love that you have it included on your website. So talk to us a little bit about why you felt important to put it on your website and what it means to you.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Creatively, I think, so that particular sentence or that conversation, as much as it's, you know, in my entire body, so it's going to show up in different places. In production was the number one place where it shows up. So I'll speak to that in a moment. But again, I suppose I'm starting to laugh because it's like, that shows up for me every day, right? But we were just kind of speaking to, there's going to be a certain unpredictability in terms of vision and the future, right? That we can call risk. And maybe we can touch on that in a little bit when we're talking about moving the company forward from here. But this, you know, getting up every day in the morning, I'm kind of not kidding, and it might not be like every day, but I have Disneyland feeling. Like I'm excited to get in here and energize my crew and energize my company and energize myself through my creative process and my business. So it used to just be that I was having Disneyland feeling, anxiety and excited and nervous and super happy just to blow glass, but it has translated back into the business. So, you know, I might have a little like Japanese nod. I do the same things every morning on routine when I come in. And that's part of that thriving and predictability to get the results that I need to get set up. And then I can get into a different space and kind of open myself up to see what's possible. So, initially that type of conversation dovetailed directly into how I make things. Making the same bottles, quote unquote, over and over and over again seem completely foreign and asinine to a lot of my glassblower friends who consider themselves more like glass artists and they want to make something different every time. You know, I wanted to create things and make things that made me feel really good as a human being while I was making them, and also like do something about the interior landscapes that I'm totally passionate about and that I want to be included in. And so that's the reason for the abundance of things that we make here, right? Okay. I want to have a say in this wonderful conversation of design that is happening globally and gosh darn it, hasn't it grown
Right.
in the last 20 years? I mean, thank God it's landed on our soil finally. I feel like, the United States is finally catching up to global design, from here to Kansas to Maine to, I mean, if you just look at Instagram photographs coming in from all over, like I just am tickled by the amount of abundance of design in the States. It's just fantastic.
Yeah.
So.
And do you think that it really is more now, or do you think we're just more aware of it because it's so accessible by social media? Or, I mean, as an artist and a designer, you probably know the difference. So it really is more now, you're saying?
I'm just speaking to, if we travel back in time, that there was probably a time in the United States where design wasn't really even part of the conversation except in key areas. I mean, you have your key architects that helped develop something like Palm Springs or certain areas here in Los Angeles. But I think what I guess I was speaking to is like even now in terms of the middle of the country, you're finding like amazing things happening in design, and the breadth of that conversation seems to have increased. Do you think?
I don't know. I don't have a perspective on it because it's not something that I've ever really closely paid attention to, but I'm by nature a questioner. And so when anybody tells me anything, I'm like, well, but really? So like my brain goes, is it really more, or do we just see it more? Like even when people this is a typical thing in my circle, it'll be like, whenever, it never was this bad with, I don't know, anything that's happening in the news. Like kids today, are horrible. They do this. And I'm like, you just didn't know about them before. Like, in the 50s or the 60s, it wasn't on the news. Or like, when I was growing up in the 60s and the 70s, if something happened in our high school, the whole country didn't know about it. And so I just am I'm the one who always goes, really? Is that true? Or do we just want to believe it? So, but I don't know that about art. And that's why I truly asked you, because it really could be that there's a renaissance and a birth of art in America now, in like you said, not just in the hot pockets of art where we expect it in Soho or Palm Springs and so forth. I think it's pretty cool. I did have a conversation one time in the very beginning of the podcast, and I'm trying to remember who it was. It's going to come to me. I don't know what it was, but the person was in the Midwest, and I think it might have been Andrew Savolsky, and he just made this contact through some social media thing and got brought to New York City and started this amazing internship. I know who it was. I think it was Peter Fasano talking about when he came up in the 60s in his art and so forth, and how different it was then as compared to social media now. So, but anyway, It's just interesting. It's philosophy, and it's debatable, and of course we could go round and round it for hours. But but you're enthused. The bottom line is that you're enthused about the art scene and the design scene in America at this point.
Absolutely.
Very good.
I think one of the things that I rewind back to is the difference in retail climate and its focus on design from 2000. I have to say it's 2002, because that's the mark in which I actually entered the market with my very first tiny little line in the city of San Francisco. I suppose I could see some things coming. So when I think about some of the key cities that we've seen grow over time, I'm kind of amazed. Like, wow, I didn't realize there was a design shop in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Right. So it actually is a growth. That's very fun. That's very interesting. I don't know. Well, I have to say, it's been really fascinating speaking with you and learning about the evolution of yourself as an artist and a designer and a maker and as a business person. And thank you for sharing both the creative side of the things that you've learned over your 25-year career, as well as the business side of it. I think that it's good advice for interior designers out there, no matter if they're thinking about designing furniture or lighting or fabric design or anything, to know that it is a very long process, to be patient, to make sure that you're very skilled before you put your toe in the water and don't right? Like it's and it's funny too, because even young interior designers that come out of school and work for other firms, of course there's always that one in whoever who's can come out of design school and just, put their stake in the ground and, and be fabulous. But I think that at least a lot I have found some of the most successful interior designers that I've spoke to on the program have spent at least a couple of several years working for other firms. And I believe that that's a strong part of your message, that we're happy to invest 15 years to get your skill and yourself to a point where you knew it was now time for you. Doesn't mean everybody has to do 15 years. And of course, I think glass blowing might be a little bit more difficult curve to master there. But it is said advice to designers. Don't come out of college at 20 years old and think that, if you work for a firm till you're 27 or 28, you're half dead. It's like you got a whole life ahead of you, right?
Yeah, just getting warmed up. That's what we say. That's what I tease around here. Hey, we're just getting warmed up.
Pretty soon we'll be 3,000 degrees.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty funny. Every business has their nonsense that they say to each other, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's lots of quips around here.
Oh, that's fun. Well, I really smile picturing your particular company there. And I think it's really cool. I think what's interesting is a little bit of dichotomy of you, that I know that it must take a tremendously free, creative mind to create the beautiful things that I saw on curatedkravet.com, the lighting and the vases and the decanters and everything. But at the same time, I love that you thrive in, almost like a Rain Man approach to coming to work. It's like, I come in, I do this, I do that, we make cafe, we make lunch, we do it, and then it's like, it's almost like all of that enables you to just go, okay, I followed every system. There's 322 systems that I have to follow, but now when I blow glass, it's kitty bar the gate.
Absolutely. You nailed it. That is so true. I'm over here half sweating and half laughing,
But it's a really good thing. It's a really cool thing, because in a way, it's a very finite way to describe what is a very important aspect of being a profitable business, is everything that you can lock down with a system and a process, lock it down, because there's always going to be things that come out of that system, and you want to minimize those things and minimize those fires and those, and not even just the negatives, but the positives. But if all the other stuff is like, I got that, I did my 322 steps and Wapner's on at 402, I'm good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited for you and your opportunity with CuratedKravet.com. And I do want to take this time to really encourage the designers listening to go to CuratedKravet.com, especially to see all of Joe Cariati's beautiful work, but also everything that Kravet has gone and searched the globe to find for you, to source for your projects. And don't forget that you get 10% off your first order by using the code CKPodcast. So, Joe, thanks so much for joining me. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, LuAnn. It was a pleasure.
I'm so proud to tell you that our podcast is sponsored by Kravet Inc., featuring CuratedKravet.com. You know, because I've told you a million times, that I've been a Kravet customer since the early 1980s. And the truth is, I can't say enough great things about Kravet Inc., except to tell you that now there's CuratedKravet.com. At CuratedKravet.com, they work so hard to source high-quality items for you and for your clients. And they really do make it very easy to find that unique piece to complete your interior design project. Do you know what a couple of my favorite parts are? First, it's trade only. That's right, they have your back at Kravet Inc. Second, they have no minimums. Isn't that awesome? And third, the ordering process is a snap. Design, click, deliver. It's so easy. You need to visit CuratedKravet.com today and be sure to use your discount code CKPodcast. You get to use that code for one order and you will get 10% off that entire order. CK Podcast at CuratedKravet.com. So what are the key takeaways from this particular episode? Well, I have to say the first and the most obvious is if you have not been to curatedkravet.com yet, now is the time to go, right? I mean, I've been telling you for months and months and months. And if you haven't been enticed before this by conversations with Barclay Butera or Candace Olson or Denise McGahey or Elizabeth Lamont or any of the others that we have talked about that have had their collaborations with Kravet Inc., now you really, it's time. Just go. Open your computer and go to curatedkravet.com and see what there is there for you and check out this amazing glassware collection with lightings and lamps and accessories that Joe has created with the exclusive colors available only through curatedkravet.com. Okay, so promise me you'll finally get there if you are still a holdout and haven't been there yet. All right, how about the business takeaways from this show? Well, I like that Joe understands that as a creative person that it takes, he didn't say it in these exact words, I'm going to paraphrase and infer what I took from him, is that he understands it takes a ton of creative energy in order to be successful in his business. And so what he does is he takes off his plate all of the decisions in the course of a day that can actually be automated. Okay. So now we don't actually physically have them automated on machines and so forth, but he doesn't rethink every day. How is he going to enter into his business? How is the first opening bell going to go essentially, right? How is lunch going to happen? How are the meetings going to happen? How are the meetings with the bookkeeper going to happen? No, he set a clear foundation for his business. He makes it stable. He knows that he has a trusted bookkeeper that's been with him for many years. I'm sure he didn't enunciate it, but I'm sure he has it established how often they meet and go over different things. But the point is that he explained how if all of that is done and that is all taken care of, then he can put his energy into designing and creating his art, okay? And so what I'm saying to you is, what can you do in your business? I can tell you in WindowWorks, I tell you all the time, we have systems that have systems, but the broad view is like Monday is staff day, okay? Monday morning is meeting, go over every single order in the file, every single thing, have conversations, what's being installed, who needs to know about it. Tuesday is status day. Every single order that we have in our drawer, Adriana will call every single vendor and say, when is this coming in? Is this still on track? La, 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 la. That's all day Tuesday. Wednesday is she checks all of the people who have not paid us. Okay, it's called Problems Not Paid Day. So if you haven't paid WindowWorks, every Wednesday you're going to get a phone call. And then there is also Problem Day on Thursday. So every Thursday, every single order that has some nudgy problem, it needs a part or it needs a this, she goes through and makes sure that all the vendors are on track in getting us everything that we need to complete an order. And then Friday is pay the bills day. Okay. So we do these, of course, all kinds of other things happen on these days, but these are overarching systems so that we don't wake up in 3 weeks and go, we haven't checked our bills, or, we don't have that part for that Mrs. Smith that we ordered and it never came in. So there are ways that you can look at your individual firm and figure out what kinds of things can you chunk, batch, systemize so that your mind is free and able to create and dream and build your projects and build your business. Okay. So, and we have had plenty of conversations on the show with those individual tasks. So please take it to heart and understand that the most successful businesses do systemize as many things as they can so that they can work on their creative part of their business and the building of the business. All righty. I want to mention to you that last week, we were at the Kravet showroom in New York City, and we saw the brand new showroom. And if you're not in the New York area, or if you are and you haven't been there yet, that you do have the opportunity to see it on the 1 hour long Facebook Live video that we did. I had conversations with Scott Kravet and Carrie Kravet and Will Hunt Lewis and the other members of the showroom, and we got to see the fabrics and the carpet and the lighting and the accessories. So if you're not in the area and you'd love a first-hand bird's eye view of the showroom, please head over to the LuAnn Nigara Facebook page or Kravet Facebook page or a Well Designed Design Business YouTube page, and you can see the little tour of the showroom and see everything that they've done with this beautiful showroom. And of course, if you're planning a trip to the New York area, you definitely have to stop by and see it. And then the other thing I want to say is don't forget, if you're going to Las Vegas Market, I will be at the Kravet showroom in Las Vegas. Yes, I will, with Kelly Ellis, our rock star designer there. And we're going to have a discussion there on how to grow from design firm to design empire. So I'll be talking with Kelly and asking all of the questions that you want to know on how to grow your firm into an empire the way Kelly has. And that will be at Las Vegas Market, August 1st, Tuesday, at the Kravet showroom. So please make sure that if you're going to market, join us there for that day. It's going to be awesome. So thank you so much for joining me. Please remember to show all of our sponsors some love, and especially today, a shout out to Kravet Inc. Thank you again for everything that you do for us, this little baby podcast here. And I'm asking all of you to please remember to always patronize and show your love to all of the sponsors, and especially to Kravet. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day. Thank you for joining me again today for another episode of A Well-Designed Business. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks in Livingston, New Jersey, your trade resource for custom window treatments and awnings. Learn more about WindowWorks at www.windowworks-nj.com. All of our music is original music by Room 2 Productions. Please contact us if you want to learn more about original music for your business or your events.